you, denizens of the internet. In 1978, Woody Allen's Annie Hall won Best Picture, beating out Star Wars: A New Hope, and was forever vilified by Star Wars fans as a false Oscar winner. I thought I'd revisit Annie Hall and see if it held up over the years. As both a Star Wars and Woody Allen fan, I hold no grudges. But if you compare legacies, I mean, there's no argument. Annie Hall and its sequels, Annie's Bigger Hall, and The Big Floppy Hat were huge. I'm kidding, of course. The Academy voters did not anticipate the massive cultural influence Star Wars had. Not sure there were any Alvy Singer action figures, though even I bought a pair of Annie Hall glasses, and many of you out there would probably accuse me of still wearing them. Even without knowing its legacy, Star Wars was clearly a better film. But what was the competition like for the 1978 Oscars? Along with Hall and Wars, there was The Goodbye Girl, Julia, and The Turning Point. But for this discussion, I think it's also important to compare it to the previous year. We had Rocky, All the President's Men, Bound for Glory, Network, and Taxi Driver. Curiously, Rocky was also the least deserving winner that year. Funny that. I think we can agree that 1977, the slate for it, was much better. The weaker offerings in 78 certainly helped Annie Hall win, I think. Perhaps you could argue that Star Wars was viewed as just a frivolous popcorn movie, not serious enough for Academy voters, but comedies were never popular Oscar winners either. I distinctly remember when Annie Hall won that it seemed to be an odd choice. I mean, both Julia and The Turning Point were prototypical Oscar noms, packed with scene-chewing female star power and tear-jerking performances. Watching Annie Hall recently was an interesting experience. It's still worth seeing, especially if you're a Woody Allen fan. Are we allowed to say that we're Woody Allen fans? Anyway, lots of great performances. It had those meta moments that pleasantly surprised people. I personally loved the way Allen directed his movies, starting with Annie Hall. The sidewalk scene where Tony Roberts and Allen walked towards the camera from really, really far away in one shot was typical of Allen's innovative take on comedy. That being said, Sleeper holds up to repeat viewings much better. The jokes didn't land as well as this febrile mind recalls, but that is the nature of jokes. I can tell that many scenes were made to fit jokes that were part of his stand-up act rather than the other way around. The other thing that I probably found attractive at the time was that Allen's character, while being neurotic, was sexually unambiguous and not shy about bedding women, which was not the typical disposition of nerdy comedians on screen, or in my case, off screen. The parade of skinny actresses, which included Keaton, Carol Kane, and Shelley Duvall wearing singlets, all of them, while in bed with Allen, felt very boho and rustic to me. Other actors in the movie included Christopher Walken, Tony Roberts, Colleen Dewhurst, and the very first film appearance by Sigourney Weaver, albeit way off in the distance, but not in a singlet, curiously. Woody was lucky to have been able to make fun of the last vestiges of an era of pompous intellectuals, important movies, books, and plays. The nonsense that purports to be heady discourse today is just diversity word salad. Diane Keaton was fantastic. A legendary and unique performance. I found Allen to be more grating than I recall. The moments he broke the fourth wall was always entertaining, but Alvy was a jerk, which made sense for Annie's character arc. I think Allen was cribbing Pygmalion as Annie blossomed under Alvy's intellectual prodding. So much so that eventually, she didn't need them anymore. And give Alan credit, I'm sure that's what he was going for. And it was refreshing to subvert the boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl trope. It was a very feminist film in that way. There is a lot to like about Annie Hall, but as odd a choice as it was, Star Wars would never have won for Best Picture. So in that sense, we shouldn't have been mad when it lost. And to some degree, maybe that was for the best. The influence on blockbuster movies Star Wars had was both good and bad. Could you imagine what the studios would have done if movies like Star Wars were legitimate Oscar contenders? It would have been utter mayhem, as a flood of seasoned actors and actresses would be shoehorned into ridiculous comic book movies. Oh, I'm glad that never happened. While I don't think Annie Hall was deserving of an Oscar, I think we were much better off Star Wars didn't. Or do you think Star Wars should have actually won? Till next time, denizens, be seeing you.